Our nation faces serious problems, immediate problems, and we cannot wait to tackle them until after the election. We are over $15.7 trillion in debt, and before the end of this year, it will be over $16 trillion. We have a tax code that is unmanageable and a burden on conscientious taxpayers. And if the President and Congress fail to act, we have a tax increase coming next year that will dwarf any in our nation's history. We cannot afford to wait another 7 months to get our fiscal house in order, and we need to act now. President Obama at least claims to understand that we cannot wait to address this fiscal crisis. He remarked recently that the fact that this is an election year is not an excuse for inaction. Unfortunately, other than talk, the President and his liberal allies have done nothing to address either our rising debt or the fiscal cliff that we are quickly approaching, both of which are significantly hindering our economic recovery and job growth. Last week, President Obama's budget received 0 votes in the United States Senate. For the second year in a row, every Republican and every Democrat who voted on the President's budget voted against it. And remarkably, not one Democrat voted for the serious Republican budgets offered by my friend Chairman Paul Ryan and my friends and colleagues, Senators Toomey, Paul, and Lee. While he talks a big game, President Obama has shown little interest in lighting a meaningful path towards balancing the budget, reforming the tax code, and reducing the tax burden on working families and small businesses. Instead, President Obama seems to have a single-minded focus on his reelection. But while he attempts to scare up votes in swing states, Americans across the country are suffering due to President Obama's failed economic policies. The people of Utah and the people across the country are naturally growing restless. They look to Europe and see the consequences of out-of-control spending and taxes. Yet even with the example of Europe, the President and his friends resist meaningful spending cuts at every turn, and his liberal allies have done everything they can to mislead the public about the responsible intentions of Republicans to reduce wasteful government spending. Just as critical for our economy is the President's failure to do anything to address the tax relief that will expire at the end of this year. If the President allows current tax relief to expire, the result will be at least a $4 trillion tax increase on the American people. You can call this a fiscal cliff. You can call it Tax-mageddon, as others have done. Whatever you call it, it will be a disaster for the middle class. And it will be a disaster for small businesses. It will be the engine of our economic recovery. Now, one thing we hear time and time again from businesses is that uncertainty holds them back from investing, expanding, and hiring. A robust recovery will require permanent pro-growth tax policy, and given the continued jobs recession and weak economic growth, we need those policies now. Economic growth slowed to 2.2% last quarter. For 39 consecutive months, the unemployment rate has remained above 8%. But that only tells part of the story. 12.5 million Americans are unemployed, and of those, more than 5.1 million workers have been looking for work for 27 weeks or more. 7.9 million Americans are working part-time for economic reasons, and another 2.4 million have only a marginal attachment to the labor force. Close to 2 million college graduates are unemployed. Growth slowed to a tepid 2.2% rate in the first quarter, and we already saw business cut back. Investment as business investment spending declined 2.1% in the quarter. And yet the President and his Democratic allies seem content, even in this environment, to sit on the sidelines as Tax-mageddon approaches and threatens even greater harm to our economy. The coming tax increases will be, without any exaggeration, the largest tax increases in American history. And the possibility of these tax increases is creating enormous uncertainty. The so-called business tax extenders expired at the end of 2011. Will there be an R&D tax credit in 2012? Will there be an exemption from, or an exception, excuse me, from Subpart F for active financing income after 2011? Families and businesses do not know if the 2001 and 2003 tax relief will be extended beyond 2012. That creates tremendous uncertainty for anyone planning on buying a home, saving for college, investing in a new business, or hiring a new worker. Will pass-through organizations be taxed at 35% or 39.6%? Will dividends be taxed at 15%, or will dividends be taxed at 39.6%, as President Obama has proposed? Will there be a death tax that hits family businesses and farms with a maximum rate of 55%, or of 35%, or of something else? And what will happen to the alternative minimum tax? Will it be patched? Will it be reformed? Will it be repealed? Will it just be replaced with higher taxes somewhere else? The President and the Senate Democratic leadership have shown no willingness to answer these questions and provide the certainty that our economy craves. The adverse impact of these tax increases on economic growth is unquestioned. But don't take my word for it. It's been reported by the Federal Reserve Chairman, Ben Bernanke. It has been reported that Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke recently discussed with Senate Democrats the significance of Tax-Mageddon. In short, the coming tax increases will be so large that Chairman Bernanke apparently warned that monetary policy would not be capable of offsetting the resulting decline in economic growth. Just last month, the Fed's policy-setting committee repeatedly warned in minutes of their meeting that fiscal uncertainty has negative effects on consumer and business sentiment, on household spending, on durable goods, on business capital expenditures, and on hiring.